After that, Dhalâra started coming every day. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that I wasn't waiting for her. But I was. I could tell the time of day by the way the shadows shifted along the forest floor, and every time those shadows grew long, I knew she'd be there soon. I didn't have to wait long. She always arrived right on time, moving quietly through the trees with her basket in hand, and every day I was ready, sitting beneath the statue of Legina, pretending I hadn't been waiting at all. We didn't talk about anything important, not about Azura or the choice looming over me, whether I'd leave this place in 9 months or take up Azura's mantle. Nothing heavy. Instead, we talked about smaller things, the way the fireflies glowed at night, her day-to-day tasks in the temple, the strange dreams we both had sometimes. I told her about the owl that kept showing up, and how it seemed to be mocking me. And she told me that owls were considered bad omens in Lothleleshian culture. Wonderful, I said. That explains a lot. And then, one day, she started telling me how the Vashir beasts were trained. I didn't care much about the Vashir, but I let her talk, just to hear her voice. And when she hesitated, I found myself filling in the silence with stories of my own, like the time I went fox hunting with my uncle. I left out the part where I vomited on my horse and had to go back early, though. No need to ruin a perfectly good story. It was easy, talking to her like that. Easier than I expected. The conversations weren't deep, and they didn't have to be. They were just nice. And little by little, the knot in my chest loosened. Not enough to untangle entirely, but enough to make it through the day without feeling like I was drowning. The strangest part was how quickly it became routine. Dhalâra never stayed long, just enough time to leave the food, talk for a bit, and then disappear back into the garden paths. And every evening, without fail, I found myself waiting for her. Not because I needed her. Not because I liked her. She was weird. She constantly tugged at her clothes, and she never seemed to understand when she was being funny. Sometimes she would go silent when I asked her something. I'd sit there waiting forever for her to answer, but she'd just look away, her brows slightly furrowed. Then, just when the silence had stretched so long I'd forgotten what I'd even asked, she'd finally speak.
"Sideways,"
she said. "What?"
"You asked how I slept tonight."
Like I said, she was weird. But slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, a fragile kind of trust began to grow between us. It wasn't friendship, I swear. But it was something. A kind of quiet, unspoken understanding that we weren't quite as lonely as we'd thought. And for now, that was enough. One of those days, Dhalâra sat cross-legged, her fingers idly tracing the edge of her sleeve, when I leaned back against a mossy stone, legs stretched out in front of me. My gaze lingered on her hands, on the scars etched around her nails, deep and jagged, as if they'd been clawed at relentlessly. They looked awful, cutting into the flesh that anchored her nails. For a moment, I considered asking her about them. What had caused them, who or what had done that to her. But the thought snagged on something unspoken between us, and I let it go.
"I met an octopus once,"
she said, out of the blue. I turned to her, lifting a skeptical brow. "You met an octopus?"
"Yes, in the lake."
She paused for a moment, as if measuring the memory in her mind.
It swam right up to me, a little one. It touched my wrists with its tentacles.
Ugh, that would have freaked me out.
Because it would remind you of when Azura cut out your eye, right?
Her words were like a punch to the gut. I sat up, my muscles locking tight as the memories washed over me. I felt it everywhere, like a phantom pain. The wet claws slick with lake water, pinning me to the cold stone table. The flash of the blade, the steel digging into my eye. Dhalâra's head tilted slightly. She was watching me as I flinched, the crease between her brows deepening, as if she was untangling a knot in her mind.
What is it?
She asked. Why did you have to bring that up? I said, my heart trembling in my chest.
You said you would have freaked out if you met an octopus. I just assumed it was because some of the deep ones have tentacles and how they were holding you down while Azura...
I don't want to talk about that. Okay? She tightened her lips. I swallowed hard, my hands clammy in my lap, a pulse beating in the back of my skull.
I'm sorry,
she said. It's okay. Just don't bring that up. A quiet settled between us, thick and uncomfortable, like something neither of us knew how to put down. I think Dhalâra was trying to think of something to say, anything to pull us out of the uncomfortable space we'd stumbled into. I decided to help her out. So what did you do when you met the octopus, I mean?
I caught it.
And?
Had it for supper.
I stared at her, caught between disbelief and amusement. Then before I knew it, a laugh escaped me. It felt strange in my chest, but good too, like a weight lifting. I wiped a tear from my eye and shook my head. You ate it? Dhalâra gave a small nod, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to eat an octopus you just met. For a while, we just sat there, sharing the silence, the tension from earlier slowly ebbing away. Truth is, I said, looking into the gloom of the garden, I'm scared of water. Dhalâra tilted her head, her dark eyes focused on me with quiet curiosity. I sighed, pulling my knees closer to my chest. When I was 7 years old, I almost drowned. I was down by the harbour back home in Foxenberg with one of my handmaidens. Anna was her name. I decided I wanted to swim. I'd never done it before, but it didn't seem that hard. I figured if I couldn't manage, the waves would just carry me back to the dock and I'd climb out. But the moment I got in, the currents caught me, pulled me under. I fought to stay afloat, but every time I kicked to the surface, something seemed to pull me back down. I remember the helplessness, the panic. My whole body was so tired, I couldn't even scream. I just struggled. And then I went under. Dhalâra's gaze stayed steady on me, not cold or detached, just present. I still remember it really well. The pull of the water, the cold. I thought that was it. I was going to die. I paused, feeling that old dread deep coil around inside me. And then everything went black.
You passed out?
Mm-hmm. I woke up 7 days later. My father... He'd had Anna executed. Said it was her fault. Said she didn't do her job, didn't watch me properly. Dhalâra shifted slightly. Her hands resting quietly on her lap. But she didn't interrupt. I liked Anna. My voice wavered, and I hated how it sounded. She was the only one of our servants I actually liked. Apparently she had pleaded for mercy, said she'd jumped in after me, said she'd saved me. But Father didn't believe her. I swallowed hard, keeping my eye straight ahead, rather than trying to look at Dhalâra. He'd had her hanged. I remember standing in Gallows Square, watching her body sway. Crows plucking at her bones. I pressed a thumb to my temple, trying to rub away the weight of the memory. After that, I began to have nightmares.
What kind of nightmares?
I exhaled, slowly. I'd be lying there, unable to move. It felt like my body was being dragged underwater, like drowning all over again. And there was always a woman.
A woman?
Yeah. She'd sit on my chest. Her skin was grey. Her face was scarred and her eyes, they were huge, bulging, black as pitch like a bug's. She never spoke, never moved, just stared, unblinking. Her ears were strange too. One was cut clean off. The other scarred and twisted, mangled. And the worst part, she was dead.
Dead?
Yeah, like rotten. Dhalâra's brow creased.
How could she sit on your chest and stare at you if she was dead?
It was a dream, Dhalâra. Dreams don't have to make sense. She just sat there, pressing down on my chest until I couldn't breathe. I started thinking of her as the horror. Later, I learned there are people in the far north of the Empire who looked like her. I said, glancing at Dhalâra. You, the Ash Elves of Loch Lalesh. Dhalâra's eyes widened ever so slightly, just enough for me to catch it. You have grey skin, big dark eyes, just like the horror. No offense. I shifted where I sat, running my hand along the mossy stone behind me. For some reason, that made me curious about Loch Lalesh, about your people. It was like I felt some kind of pull. Dhalâra blinked, her expression unreadable.
Why?
I don't know, I admitted. Maybe I thought that if I learned enough about you, I could understand her, the horror. Or maybe...
Maybe what?
I don't know. I shrugged and ran a hand through my hair, tugging at a loose strand. I asked Father about the Ash Elves. He told me about the war, the rebellion that took place here 30 years ago. Were you alive then? Dhalâra shook her head. I turned, looking into the shadows around us, letting the memories fill me like the fog filled the air between the trees. I hadn't thought about the horror for so long. Never talked to anyone about her. Not like this. As I recalled Father's war stories, the memory of Dren's words came slithering.
Your father is an evil man.
And the coachman in the ash wastes.
Your father has a lot of blood on his hands, or rather, on his conscience.
It didn't sit right. My father was a hero. Captain of the Invincible Dawn, the finest ship in the Grazian squadron of the Emperor's Armada. He'd fought valiantly against the terrorists who sought to tear Loch Lalesh apart from the inside. I nearly told Dhalâra all of this, but caught myself just as I remembered Father's stories of how the rebels would have dragged the colony back into the Dark Ages, back to the Dhalâra worship that plagued Lochlalesh before the Empire annexed it. I remembered where we were, sitting in a garden devoted to the Dhalâra Lady of Oblivion, in a temple consecrated to her, and Vexlanka and Zaraven Dural. Clearly, despite losing the war, the Ash Elves had continued their practices in secret. Dhalâra worship was alive and well in Lochlalesh. Not only that, but I was supposed to become the chosen of Zaraven. And Dhalâra, she was a devout follower of all of it. Best not to mention that part. I adored his stories, I said instead. I'd beg him to tell them over and over, and after some time when the horror came and visited me in my dreams, I wasn't afraid anymore. It was weird, though. The less scared I felt, the more... I don't know. The more she felt like she wanted something from me. Like she wasn't just sitting on my chest, you know? It was as if she was waiting for me.
Waiting for what?
I don't know. But it started to dawn on me that maybe, just maybe, whatever she wanted had something to do with Anna.
Your handmaiden?
Mm-hmm. The horror appeared after that whole nasty affair, you know? So, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
What do you think? Dhalâra shrugged.
I don't know. I never have dreams like that. Lying still with someone on top of me? Never. In my dreams, I fly. I whirl through temples that rise and crumble beneath me. 1 second I'm here, the next I'm halfway across the world, or riding moonbeams across the sky. I fight hashlights with a wooden spoon, then dive headfirst into rivers that flow backwards. Once, I ran from a tree that kept falling forever. Every time it hit the ground, it sprouted new branches and started falling again.
Her voice brightened, a trace of eagerness creeping in, as if the topic thrilled her more than it should.
And sometimes there are doors, dozens of them, just scattered everywhere. Some lead to nowhere, others open into entirely new places. Once I found myself inside a giant fish, with lanterns hanging from its ribs like chandeliers. Another time, I ended up on a battlefield wearing nothing but my sister's hat. And, oh, there is this one dream where I was chasing a talking raven and...
Wait, you have a sister? I interrupted.
Yeah, Ezra.
My stomach dropped. Ezra is your sister?
Yes, and in that dream, I was wearing her hat, which is funny because she never let me borrow her stuff. And then, in other dreams, there's an enormous moth.
How can the two of you be sisters? Dhalâra blinked, puzzled.
Same mother, same father.
I stared at her. Ezra. That Ezra. The one who wanted Azura to rip my spine out through my bum. That Ezra is your sister?
Yes.
I shook my head, struggling to connect the dots. How? You two... I waved a hand between us. You're nothing alike. Dhalâra gave a small shrug.
She's always been like that.
What? A murderous lunatic?
Intense.
I scoffed. That's one way to put it.
She's not so bad,
Dhalâra said, thoughtful now.
She serves Azura on the Erden fiercely, loyally. She's a good person. She just... I don't know. She's a bit...
Intense?
Yeah.
A silence crept in between us, but Dhalâra broke it, her gaze soft.
In Ezra's eyes, you'll always be an outsider in this place. She doesn't like you.
You think?
But she means well.
Means well? She tried to stab me.
Technically, she only threatened to stab you.
Dhalâra said, her lips twitching. For once, I caught a flicker of humour in her half gaze, like she knew, for the first time, she was being funny. I let out a laugh before I could stop myself. A sharp, startled thing that surprised even me. God, you're impossible, I said, rubbing a hand over my face. But I couldn't help it. Somehow, she made the absurdity of my life here feel almost bearable. Almost. We sat in silence after that, the garden humming quietly around us. Dhalâra traced patterns into the moss with one finger, her expression soft and far away. I watched her, wondering again how someone like Ezra could be her sister. Dhalâra shifted slightly, brushing dirt from her sleeves.
I should go,
she said, her voice low and unhurried. The familiar ache stirred as she said it, creeping cold and sharp beneath my ribs. But it didn't dig in quite so deeply this time. I thought about asking her to stay, just for a little longer, but the words wouldn't come. See you tomorrow? I said instead, my voice low and awkward. She nodded.
Tomorrow.
She rose to her feet, her robes whispering against the earth as she moved towards the edge of the clearing. The basket swayed gently in her hand, and she glanced back at me once. Just a flicker of a glance, soft and unreadable, before slipping into the shadows. I stayed where I was, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading into the garden paths. A warmth spread through my chest, and I caught myself smiling. For the first time in what felt like forever. I did not feel so forsaken,